Good morning, guys and girls. How we doing? Happy Tuesday. Today's lesson is worksheet number 4 in the Industrial Revolution Content Library folder. And today's topic is the Erie Canal. So yesterday you watched 3 videos about inventions of the Industrial Revolution. And we're going to come back to those inventions beginning tomorrow when we get into transportation, especially railroads. And then we spend a day on Eli Whitney as well. But today we're going to change gears a little bit and focus on the Erie Canal. So the Erie Canal wasn't even really an invention. It was a engineering marvel, like building a bridge or completing the subway system in New York City. Let's get started with the do now to learn a little bit about what the Erie Canal was. So down here on your worksheet, you have a reading. Couple short paragraphs. I want you to pause my video, complete the reading, answer number 1. Welcome back. We'll do the reading together. The Erie Canal, 1825. Let's take a look at the aim as well. Today we're going to talk about how the Erie Canal contributes to the development of New York State. So very important. I want you to do this on the map before we answer the do now question. We're going to trace the shape of New York State with a highlighter. Today's lesson really focuses in on New York State and the way the Erie Canal impacts trade in New York State. So that map of the Northeast really focuses in on New York. You know that we are down here on Long Island. That's about where Elmont is. All right. And today we're going to take a look at how New York City is connected to the rest of upstate New York and the Great Lakes by a man-made waterway or a canal. The other thing I want to do before going over the do now is define this new word. A canal is a man-made waterway. So I want you to write this above today's worksheet. And what's a man-made waterway? It's basically like a man-made river. And it's used for trade. And so imagine, really what we're discussing today is a man-made river that was dug across the state of New York. All right, so I'm tracing with a blue line the Erie Canal today because it's still there. The Erie Canal was a man-made waterway that was dug across New York State that connected the eastern half of the state to the Great Lakes for trade. Let's read about it. Based on the reading and map, answer number 1. The Erie Canal, 1825. A man-made waterway across upstate New York that allowed farmers to ship their goods to New York City, a port city. I'm going to circle New York City in red on my map and label it New York City. The canal was completed in 1825 and helped New York City grow into the center of trade in the U.S. The canal was an instant success, reducing travel time and attracting new businesses to cities along the canal, such as Albany, Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo. I'm also going to highlight where those cities are: Buffalo, Rochester, Albany, and Syracuse would be about here, but you can't see it on the map. Now, one thing that I underlined in that reading is that New York City grows into the World Trade Center because of the Erie Canal. We think of that phrase when we think of the Twin Towers and 9/11, but if you think about what that phrase is saying about New York City, our city is the center of world trade. And this Erie Canal really helped New York grow into this World Trade Center. Goods that are being brought over from Europe can now be shipped into the port of New York City. Now follow my route on the map. You're going to see the green dots. From New York City, the goods can be brought up the Hudson River. So I'm going to make green dots up the Hudson River And these goods can be brought across New York State by this new man-made waterway that connects the Hudson River to Lake Erie. And so the Erie Canal really changes the history of New York, because before railroads and before airplanes, the Erie Canal allows New York City to be connected to the Western territories. Let's see if we answered number one correctly. What river connected the Erie Canal to New York City? Based on the reading and the map, it says that the Hudson River connected the Erie Canal to New York City. The Hudson River is here. Once the Erie Canal, which is that blue segment on my map, once the Erie Canal was completed, it connected to New York City by the Hudson River. Let's take a look at a better map that I have here in my PowerPoint. So this map is much clearer, and it kind of shows you the layout of New York State today. New York City is down here, as we showed on my map, all right? And the Hudson River, let me see if I can change to blue. The Hudson River is a very large river that travels north to south, actually, but that doesn't mean that ships can't also travel up the Hudson River. And so that large river has always been there. It's been there for thousands and thousands of years. In 1817, the governor of New York, a man named DeWitt Clinton, began a project which, the president told him was a crazy idea. His idea was to connect the smaller rivers and lakes in upstate New York so that you had one continuous waterway going from the Hudson River all the way to Lake Erie. If you look on my map, Lake Erie is one of the 5 Great Lakes, all right, very important part of the story here. And those Great Lakes really connect New York State to the whole Western Territory. The problem is that this land in upstate New York is smothered in between mountains and rocky soil, and so it's not going to be an easy project. And I'm going to highlight the Erie Canal in a brighter color purple. It is not going to be an easy project to dig a man-made canal across the state of New York so that we can connect the Hudson River, that's the Hudson River, to New York City. All right, so let's learn about this project. We're going to go on the worksheet, back to OneNote, and we're going to begin by talking about DeWitt Clinton. That's DeWitt Clinton here. Let's label him. And I'm going to give you the answer to a question in a moment. DeWitt Clinton was governor of New York. He was elected governor of New York in 1817, the year that the Erie Canal project was begun. So I have a quick video clip that we're going to watch together. I'll jump around and I'll pause when I want you to answer the questions. You guys should just keep watching.
To New York, a narrow ditch surrounded by a tangle of weeds is all that remains here of one of America's greatest engineering achievements.
I got a mule and her name is Sal, 15 miles on the Erie Canal. She's
celebrated in story and song. The Erie Canal began construction in 1817. It was the first commercial link between New York and the American West. Thousands of canal boats made the journey from the Hudson River to Lake Erie during the canal's 150-year history, making the Erie Canal America's first superhighway. Though the Erie Canal went through 3 separate rebuildings and upgrades, it was the original canal of the early 19th century, 40 feet wide and 4 feet deep, that changed our world and consolidated the strength of a young nation.
And in very real sense.
All right, so we're going to pause it for a second there. Let's talk about the original Erie Canal, because as they said in the video, it's been expanded and upgraded a few times since. But the original Erie Canal was only 4 feet deep. You may have noticed in the video that a lot of those boats, those canal boats, were not big boats. The original Erie Canal used mules to pull these simple little canal boats across the canal. These canal boats, or skiffs, or mini barges, would be loaded up with gear for trade. Now, one of the things I want to do on today's worksheet is talk about the difficult task of getting the government to approve this project, but also the difficult task of actually digging a canal across upstate New York. So you guys are going to answer these two questions as we watch the next quick video segment. All right, I already gave you the answer to number one. DeWitt Clinton was governor of New York. Remember, the governor of a state is like the executive or the president of a state. But based on the next segment of the video, I want you to tell me more about DeWitt Clinton. Why did he want to build this canal? And then for number two, what were the reasons that building a canal across the state was difficult? So I'm jumping ahead in the video a little bit, and I will pause and narrate with you when we need to discuss. I have to find my video. There we go.
363 miles.
Seconds. All right, here we
Government
go.
began to seriously study the possibility of a Western Canal that would link the Hudson River ports of Manhattan to the Great Lakes.
Remember, for starters, I want you to write down something more about DeWitt Clinton. Why was he the man that wanted to build this canal?
In 1809, a delegation from New York traveled to Washington, D.C. to propose federal funding for a canal to the west. They projected a budget of $5 million, but many claimed a canal would cost several times that amount.
They went to Washington to meet with Thomas Jefferson, and he said, well, this is a great idea, fellas, but maybe you ought to come back in 100 years, because what you're contemplating would bankrupt the entire nation, let alone the state.
But a feasibility study for a western waterway began almost in defiance of Jefferson's flat refusal. The New York State government sent a canal committee to tour western New York to examine the area. At the committee's head was a savvy politician named DeWitt Clinton.
DeWitt Clinton was a Renaissance man. He was a naturalist, he was an educator, he was a politician. He even published things on fossils. He was a very intelligent man. But above all, he was a politician. He probably realized more than any other person that the political fortunes of the person that was able to make the canal his baby that would either rise and fall with it.
By 1817, DeWitt Clinton was governor of New York. He championed the proposed canal, which was projected to cost more than twice as much as it cost the state to fight the entire War of 1812.
All right, let's pause there. Let's talk a little bit about DeWitt Clinton. A couple of things that you may have written down if you were staying with me while you watched. He was a naturalist. Now, what does that mean? Hopefully you guys are at home thinking. DeWitt Clinton loved the outdoors. He studied the outdoors. They said that he was a very smart and savvy politician. And that means, he's a politician who has goals. He has his own aspirations. And obviously, I'm sure his main goal was that he wanted to become governor of New York. And he saw this Erie Canal project as his route to become governor of New York. He knew if the Erie Canal project was a success, that his political career would benefit from it. And so he was the champion. He was the man who was going to fight for this project to get it done. They go to Washington. President Jefferson tells them they're nuts. He says, we don't have it in the federal budget to help you complete this task. DeWitt Clinton does it as a state project without the president's approval. Now, we're going to watch one more clip to talk about why it's difficult to build this canal across the state of New York. So I'm going to go back to that same video and jump ahead about 30 seconds or so. And I want you to write down some of the reasons it's difficult to dig a man-made river across upstate New York.
The canal would have to traverse 363 miles between Lake Erie and the Hudson River. In between were mountains, valleys, rivers, and swamps. The idea of the canal was beautiful in its simplicity. The reality of the canal would be far more complex. The engineering of the Erie Canal presented several problems. There are 363 miles between Lake Erie and the Hudson River at Albany, which leads directly to New York City. To make matters worse, Lake Erie is 565 feet higher than the Hudson River. European canal builders considered the task impossible for a young and backward nation, and derided the canal as Clinton's folly. The planning of the canal had begun in 1810, with a first journey by the state's canal commissioners across western New York. Surveyor James Geddes laid out a route from Lake Erie to Albany that would take advantage of an ancient geological rift that split the state of New York.
In a very real way,
All right, boring guy, I'm going to pause you there. So, if you check out that map that they showed, it's pretty cool that they found a little flaw in the system, if you will. There's a low point that goes across western New York, and that low point is the exact path of the Erie Canal that we highlighted here on the map. Basically, what you are seeing here, and I'll draw a very rudimentary version of this, there are larger mountain ranges that span across New York State, both up and down, north and south, east and west. But there is definitely a low point through the mountains where they built the canal. And so when you're looking at question 2, one of the challenges for completing this canal definitely were the mountains in upstate New York and the changes in elevation and the fact that the canal is going to be 363 miles long. Those are definitely challenges, but their planning committee found some cheats, if you will, some ways to make the job easier. And one of those cheats was connecting rivers that were already there, rivers and lakes. So you'll notice that the Mohawk River is labeled on this map. This phase of the Erie Canal was there for them already. The Mohawk River was a natural river, not a man-made river. The western half of the canal was a lot of man-made canal building. And one other little side note, it's pretty cool to point that this is not the only canal that was in New York at the time. You see there are 5 other canals that they're highlighting: the Genesee Valley Canal, the Oswego Canal, the Black River Canal, the Chenango Canal, and the Champlain Canal. These are smaller canals that were built later that really zigzag and connect other parts of both northern and southern New York State to the Erie Canal, because this main canal is used for trade. So they wanted to build other canals in New York State that could help get goods to this highway. The Erie Canal is a main highway used for shipping and trading goods. And once those goods are brought down the Hudson to New York City, they're shipped off to Europe and loaded onto boats. Now, one of the really interesting parts of Erie Canal history were the locks that were used to deal with the changes in elevation. So let's go to page 2 on the worksheet. I apologize, my OneNote is really slow today. See if we can get it to load up. I'm going to close the app and reopen it for you. Hold on, bear with me. You should jump ahead to page 2 and take a look at the diagram, the reading about the locks. Here we go. All right, so this picture's not that clear. I've got some better pictures that we're going to look at in a little bit. Erie Canal locks system. So the way I always describe this, I'm going to do a little drawing out in the margin. If you think of New York State is not a perfectly flat, level state. And the truth is that the elevation up near the western half of the state is actually higher than the elevation near the eastern half of the state. So let's call the western half of the state Lake Erie. All right, and this is Lake Erie. And the eastern half of the state is where the Hudson River lies. If you're looking at a side cross-section of the state, the elevation is different. Now, how the heck are we going to get a boat uphill and then eventually back downhill? One of the things that students always say to me, I know, Mr. Gates, waterfalls. If you saw some of those waterfalls in the video we were watching, a boat would not survive going over the waterfalls. And so the engineers that built the Erie Canal devised a system called a locks system. And if I zoom in, I think you can see a little bit more clearly. And the lock system were almost like going up and down steps. So at each level, that's the top of the elevation, at each level, boats would be brought down through the locks so that they could travel pretty much up and downhill. It was an amazing feat in engineering. Let's read about it. Locks are used to lift or lower boats from one level to another. They are found on almost all canals and rivers. A lock is a section of canal or river that is closed off by gates, which control the water level so that boats can be raised or lowered as they pass through it. I'm going to show you a quick video of how locks work. Let me get off this boring dude. Canal, locks, how they work. Perfect. Let me find a good one. Here we go.
A canal lock raises and lowers a vessel between stretches of water of different levels. The chamber is enclosed by an upper and lower gate. Each gate has a sluice or valve which controls the flow of water in and out of the chamber, thus allowing the water level to rise or fall when desired. The opening and closing of the gates and the operation of the sluices were operated by a lockkeeper who often lived nearby. The lockkeeper would also be responsible for keeping the lock free of debris. Though some of the locks were slightly different in design, the principles of operation were basically the same. Lock 5 is what this video is based on, and perhaps it will encourage you to visit this amazing renovated structure in Wellington, Nova Scotia.
All right, so they're little videos about a canal in Nova Scotia, but hopefully you get the idea. Let's first do the sentence together. Write a sentence explaining why engineers had to use locks on the Erie Canal. The state of New York has mountains and different elevation. And so when building a man-made canal across the state of New York, they had to deal with changes in elevation. That's why the locks were necessary. Now, the last thing we're going to do today is we're going to draw a very simple diagram showing how the locks work. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw 3 levels of water. 2 levels of water, my bad. 2 levels of water. And I'm going to show the gates that would control the flow of water in and out of those canal locks. 2 large gates. And then I want to fill in the water. So this is the higher point of elevation, and this is the lower point of elevation. And this is the locks, or the gate. And so if I had a ship, I'm going to draw a very simple little ship. And I needed to get my ship downhill. Take a look. I want to draw a little line showing you that it is a lower elevation that I'm trying to get to. I would open up gate number 1, this gate. I would open up this gate, allowing my ship to sail right in. All right. Then the cool part is that the lock would have pumps. So I'm going to draw like a little pipe or tube. And those pumps would be used to remove water from inside the locks. And so as they slowly remove water from inside the locks, like you draining a bathtub, the ship would change elevation. The ship would not sit up there in the air. The ship would lower in elevation. And once they have removed the water, they would open up this gate, and the ship can sail along on its way at the lower point. Now, they would do the same thing if the ship was going in the other direction. I'm going to erase my little pump. All right, so if a ship was going in this direction, here's my ship with a little sail. I got to go this way. They would open up gate number 1 here. And now instead of pumping water out of my lock, they probably had large tubes that would pump water in. And once they fill the closed lock gate with water, the ship or the boat is at the elevation it needs to be at. They open up gate number 2 here, and the ship can sail along on its way. Hopefully you understood this. Today's lesson was a little bit different, where we watched the videos together. If I went too fast, or if you're confused, you can always go back and rewatch some of the segments. The other thing I want to show you is that I included this link here, which is the whole video. So if you wanted to check out more of that Erie Canal YouTube video, you can copy and paste or type in that link to YouTube, and you'll find the video that way. If that doesn't work, I'll show you the title of the video that we watched. The title of the video that we watched... Excuse me, boring guy. Hold on. The title of the video that we watched was the Erie Canal Documentary Geographic History. Hope you have a great day. We'll be back tomorrow. I believe we're going to do another video lesson tomorrow. So finish this work today so that you're getting yourself all caught up, and have a wonderful day. Talk to you.